Well, shall we finish tonight the chapter, the evolutionary process, ascent and integration? He's been describing that the appearance of the rising grades of evolution is a necessary process, but an ascent which also reaches back and not only includes but integrates in a growing conscious power what is emerging in the process, so that mind doesn't reject life, doesn't reject matter, but includes them in an ensphering growth, so that it goes deeper, it becomes more refined, and as it reaches up, it reaches in. As it reaches in, it reaches down. So consciousness extends its range of awareness throughout the whole of nature. So when we have the appearance of mind, mind operates in a way that is in agreeance with nature. First, it deals with the foundation of nature, which is matter, and mind focuses itself on the realm of material needs and demands. As mind develops and grows, it becomes capable of extending itself into the realm of vitality. And then a vital mind emerges, where mind is focused on the affairs of life, not so much on simply maintaining hearth and home, but on adventure, on conquest, on the experience of a wider realm of nature. But mind then eventually will grow to the point that it becomes aware of its own regions of natural power, which are above, in a sense, the affairs of life or the provinces of matter. And so it will focus on those. And so this mental person will now be described by Sri Aurobindo here. Remember, he's just described the person of the physical mind and the person of the vital mind. Now he moves on. Above this level of vital mentality, and yet more inly extended, is a mind plane of pure thought and intelligence, to which the things of the mental world are the most important realities. Those who are under its influence, the philosopher, thinker, scientist, intellectual creator, the man of the idea, the man of the written or spoken word, the idealist and dreamer, are the present mental being at his highest attained summit. This mental man has his life part, his life of passions and desires and ambitions and life hopes of all kinds, and his lower sensational and physical existence. And this lower part can often equibalance or weigh down his nobler mental element, so that, although it is the highest portion of him, it does not become dominant and formative in his whole nature. But this is not typical of him in his greatest development, for there the vital and physical are controlled and subjected by the thinking will and intelligence. So we can see that although in the rising tiers of this cosmological model that he's imposed upon our view, these tiers are increasingly inward. But even though mind appears in the human, the mental person is dealing with life power, which wants its aims, and with a kind of basic matter power. It's at the base, so we say basic. And so they can restrain the mental person from ranging exclusively into the vistas of the mind and make the mind attend to both life and matter. So the mind does not become dominant straight away. It is a rare achievement to find somebody who is merely the philosopher and not also the vital man or the physical man. The mental man, he writes, cannot transform his nature, but he can control and harmonize it and lay on it the law of a mental ideal, impose a balance or a sublimating and refining influence, and give a high consistency to the multipersonal confusion and conflict, or the summary patchwork of our divided and half-constructed being. He can be the observer and governor of his own mind and life, can consciously develop them, and become to that extent a self-creator. So mind doesn't normally rule in its own native power, but it can be done. This mind of pure intelligence has behind it our inner or subliminal mind, which senses directly all the things of the mind plane, is open to the action of a world of mental forces, and can feel the ideative and other imponderable influences which act upon the material world and the life plane, but which at present we can only infer and cannot directly experience. These intangibles and imponderables are to the mental man real and patent, and he regards them as truths demanding to be realized in our or the earth's nature. On the inner plane, mind and mind-soul, independent of the body, can become to us an entire reality, and we can consciously live in them as much as in the body. So he doesn't mean here that the mind and the soul have merged, but he means here the manomaya purusha, the person stationed at the level of the mind, a radiant figuration, you might say, of the inmost soul. But it is the soul that we know when we live attached and identified with the mind. So he's here describing the inner planes, right? The subliminal mind, so it's behind the curtain. It's not the obvious external mind focused on the things of outward nature. It's the mind engrossed in great thoughts, great perceptions, powers of insight, which are not normal to the human intelligence out here on the surface. On the inner I'll start again. On the inner plane, mind and mind-soul, independent of the body, can become to us an entire reality, and we can consciously live in them as much as in the body. We can absorb ourselves in these inner states. Thus, to live in mind and the things of the mind, to be an intelligence rather than a life and a body, is our highest position short of spirituality in the degrees of nature. Because each degree of nature tries to optimize its capacities. Yes, it continues to dwell in and integrated with the other, but still wants to bring its powers to the fullest extent into manifestation. So for the mind to reach its apex, it aspires to be the thinker, the sage, as he'll say in a moment. The mental man, the man of a self-dominating and self-formative mind and will, conscious of an ideal and turned towards its realization, the high intellect, the thinker, the sage, less kinetic and immediately effective than the vital man, who is the man of action and outer swift life fulfillment, but as powerful and eventually even more powerful to open new vistas to the race, is the normal summit of nature's evolutionary formation on the human plane. So you think of the great actors who get out and they conquer a province or become a king, and then they pass and you no longer remember their names. But the thinker who devises a new concept, brings it into formation, not only mentalizes but casts it into outer form, leaves an imprint upon humanity much greater. How much greater is Isaac Newton than any of the kings that ruled Europe in the 17th, 18th century? These 3 degrees of mentality, the physical, the vital, the intellectual persons. These 3 degrees of mentality, clear in themselves, but most often mixed in our composition, are, to our ordinary intelligence, only psychological types that happen to have developed, and we do not discover any other significance in them. But in fact, they are full of significance, for they are the steps of nature's evolution of mental being towards its self-exceeding. And as thinking mind is the highest step she can now attain, the perfected mental man is the rarest and highest of her normal human creatures. To go farther, she has to bring into the mind and make active in mind, life, and body the spiritual principle. So, the human would be the consummation of ordinary nature as we know it, in which from matter has emerged life, and from life has emerged mind. So that person who sits atop and thinks primarily, makes that the central focus of the being, that is the highest thing that nature can devise. There is greater evolution possible, but it requires us to evolve beyond the normal ordination of matter, life, and mind, which we call nature. For these are her evolutionary figures, built out of the surface mentality. To do more, she has to use more amply the unseen material hidden below our surface, to dive inwards and bring out the secret soul, the psyche, or to ascend above our normal mental level into planes of intuitive consciousness, dense with light derived from the spiritual gnosis, chidgana, ascending planes of pure spiritual mind, in which we are in direct contact with the infinite, in touch with the self and highest reality of things, Satchit Ananda. So we have to go inwards or upwards to discover the riches that will permit us to engage in further evolution. And in doing so, we contact the greater realms of being which are really superconscient to us, transcendent to this, but also immanent and present, simply concealed to our view. In ourselves, behind our surface natural being, there is a soul, an inner mind, an inner life part which can open to these heights, as well as to the occult spirit within us. And this double opening is the secret of a new evolution. So an inner mind, he's talking about the subliminal being again. There's an inner mind, not the outer mind. There's an inner life power Not the crude vital nature which wants to go out and capture and devour, but an inner vital nature which is full of nobility, which is full of the spirit of adventure and self-giving, self-sacrifice. And the occult spirit within us. Occult simply means hidden. So all of those spiritual powers which are native to the soul, waiting to be discovered inside. And this double opening is the secret of a new evolution. By that breaking of lids and walls and boundaries, the consciousness rises to a greater ascent and a larger integration which, as the evolution of mind has mentalized, so will, by this new evolution, spiritualize all the powers of our nature. So just as the mind has had an impact on physicality, as the mind has had an impact on the life being, so too the spirit, as it emerges, will have an impact on all these members of the natural being and order. This double opening is upwards or inwards. For the mental man has not been nature's last effort or highest reach, though he has been in general more fully evolved in his own nature than those who have achieved themselves below or aspired above him. She has pointed man to a yet higher and more difficult level, inspired him with the ideal of a spiritual living, begun the evolution in him of a spiritual being. The spiritual man is her supreme, supernormal effort of human creation. For having evolved, the mental creator, thinker, sage, prophet of an ideal, the self-controlled, self-disciplined, harmonized mental being, she has tried to go higher and deeper within and call out into the front the soul and inner mind and heart, call down from above the forces of the spiritual mind and higher mind and overmind, and create under their light and by their influence the spiritual sage, seer, prophet, God-lover, yogin, Gnostic, Sufi, mystic. So if at the top of nature's creation, exceeding the mental man is the possibility of the spiritual man, there is the call from within and the calling down from above of the inner psychic emerging from inside, and the descent of higher and higher powers of consciousness into a waiting, aspirational being that is no longer satisfied with mental life but wants to exceed it. And there you see the spiritual mind. That's mind aware of the spirit at its own level. The higher mind, that's mind taken up above the ratiocinative and philosophic mind and able to see in the light of identity of the self things of thought. Beyond that, of course, the overmind, which sees globally, cosmically, and is the greatest achievement so far in human consciousness. So these three rungs of higher awareness are waiting to descend, just as the inner soul is waiting to emerge from behind. And in so descending, we get the efflorescence of these great spiritual beings, the sages, the seers, the prophets, all of whom are either ensconced in a spiritual view of things or can open to it, at least temporarily. The God-lover, who can see the heart of the divine, passionately wedded to every being here, leading all creatures towards an experience of innate delight. Of the yogin, who sees oneness everywhere and all growth as possible terms of one spirit evolving endlessly through multiplicity. The Gnostic, the deep knower, the Sufi, the mystic. Pardon me. This is man's only way of true self-exceeding. In other words, to grow into the soul or to grow above into the spirit. For so long as we live in the surface being or found ourselves wholly on matter, it is impossible to go higher and vain to expect that there can be any new transition of a radical character in our evolutionary being. The vital man, the mental man, have had an immense effect upon the earth life. They have carried humanity forward from the mere human animal to what it is now. But it is only within the bounds of the already established evolutionary formula of the human being that they can act. They can enlarge the human circle, but not change or transform the principle of consciousness or its characteristic operation. Any attempt to heighten inordinately the mental or exaggerate inordinately the vital man, a Nietzschean supermanhood, for example, can only colossalize the human creature. It cannot transform or divinize him. The Nietzschean ideal, Sri Aurobindo has said in earlier passages, and he is consistent in this, is not really a growth into a future perfection of spiritual possibility, but a falling back to a lower form of life in which the vital mind dominates. So it is a regressive ideal that Nietzsche really has in view, not a supermanhood where we rise in consciousness beyond the mind, but where, in a sense, we leave the mind to go back into a pure state of vitality. So he's saying here that we escape mind and nature by the power of soul and spirit. He continues, a different possibility opens if we can live within, in the inner being, and make it the direct ruler of life, or station ourselves on the spiritual and intuitive planes of being, and from there and by their power transmute our nature. So he's speaking here of either taking a poise in the subliminal to psychicize, to make soulful our nature, or to intuitivize it and raise our consciousness to a point where we go beyond levels of rationality, beyond even the spiritualized mind which still thinks, and arrive at a power of intuition which sees truth directly without the intercession of thought. And when he speaks here about taking that station inside or above, and the power of its transmutation upon nature, this is not the farther reach of transmutation, but that these powers can affect the instrument, matter-life-mind, our adhara, our vehicle, is true. They will have an impact. They do register a change in the human construction. The spiritual man is the sign of this new evolution, this new and higher endeavor of nature. But this evolution differs from the past process of the evolutionary energy in two respects. It is conducted by a conscious effort of the human mind, and it is not confined to a conscious progression on the surface nature, but is accompanied by an attempt to break the walls of the ignorance and extend ourselves inward into the secret principle of our present being, and outward into cosmic being, as well as upward towards a higher principle. So this is interesting because first we can will the next state of evolution through our conscious effort. We can decide to outgrow where we are. It becomes a demand of our nature, a demand upon nature, that we not be limited to the inferior formulations of the past. Second thing is to break the bonds of the ignorance. And this, of course, forecasts us into the next chapter, where we'll move out of the sevenfold ignorance into the sevenfold knowledge. So, inward, outward, and upward. Inward towards the soul consciousness, outward towards an awareness of the all, the cosmic, and upward towards the transcendent. So individual, universe, and transcendence all reunited, the original terms of possible being, perfected in the aspiring human. Up till now, what nature had achieved was an enlarging of the bounds of our surface knowledge ignorance. What is attempted in the spiritual endeavor is to abolish the ignorance, to go inwards and discover the soul, and to become united in consciousness with God and with all existence. This is the final aim of the mental stage of evolutionary nature in man. It is the initial step towards a radical transmutation of the ignorance into the knowledge. So this is where, in a sense, the human begins to phase into the divine, where the mutable state begins to move into the immutable, where the dark grows into light. The spiritual change begins by an influence of the inner being and the higher spiritual mind. An action felt and accepted on the surface. So again, coming from within, that stimulation of the soul, reaching down into us from above, the inspirations coming into us from spiritual mind. And we feel it and we accept it. That leads towards this greater evolution. If we refused it, closed the door against it, we would cease to evolve. We would have attained a certain level beyond which we do not grow. He continues, but this by itself can lead only to an illumined mental idealism, or to the growth of a religious mind, a religious temperament, and some devotion in the heart and piety in the conduct. It is a first approach of mind to spirit, but it cannot make a radical change. More has to be done. We have to live deeper within. We have to exceed our present consciousness and surpass our present status of nature. So it's not enough to feel the influence from behind of the soul upon us, or to feel and register the descent of the higher consciousness. That only creates a prepared state for a future growth. We have to actually make that next step. It is evident that if we can live thus deeper within and put out steadily the inner forces into the outer instrumentation, or raise ourselves to dwell on higher and wider levels and bring their powers to bear on physical existence, not merely receive influences descending from them, which is all we can now do, there could begin a heightening of our force of conscious being so as to create a new principle of consciousness, a new range of activities, new values for all things, a widening of our consciousness and life, a taking up and transformation of the lower grades of our existence. In brief, the whole evolutionary process by which the spirit in nature creates a higher type of being. And here, yes, he does suggest quietly the power of the supramental. Each step could mean a pace, however distant from the goal, or a close approach leading to a larger and more divine being, a larger and more divine force and consciousness, knowledge and will, sense of existence and delight in existence. There could be an initial unfolding towards the divine life, recapturing Satchit Ananda here, that from which we originally came. Existence, consciousness, bliss. All religion, all occult knowledge, all supernormal as opposed to abnormal psychological experience, all yoga, all psychic experience and discipline are signposts and directions pointing us upon that road of progress of the occult self-unfolding spirit. But the human race is still weighted by a certain gravitation towards the physical. It obeys still the pull of our yet unconquered earth matter. It is dominated by the brain-mind, the physical intelligence. Thus, held back by many ties, it hesitates before the indication or falls back before the too tense demand of the spiritual effort. It's as if that lower level has a grip upon us, as if gravity calls us back to the old, the known, the familiar. It has, too, still a great capacity for skeptical folly, an immense indolence, an enormous intellectual and spiritual timidity and conservatism, when called out of the grooves of habit. Even the constant evidence of life itself that where it chooses to conquer, it can conquer, witness the miracles of that quite inferior power, physical science, does not prevent it from doubting. It repels the new call and leaves the response to a few individuals. So this is the physical mind's reluctance to change. But that is not enough if the step forward is to be for humanity. For it is only if the race advances that for it the victories of the Spirit can be secure. For then, even if there is a lapse of nature, a fall in her effort, the Spirit within, employing a secret memory, sometimes represented on the lower side, that of downward gravitation, as an atavistic force in the race, but really the force of a persistent memory in nature which can pull us either upward or downward, will call it upward again, and the next ascent will be both easier and more lasting because of the past endeavor. For that endeavor and its impulse and its result cannot but remain stored in the subconscious mind of humanity. So, in other words, a level touched as we grow upwards cannot be lost. Even if we fall back to the old familiar level, the tried and true, the good old used to be, we have touched that. And it is remembered, and nature will call us back to us or force us upwards again, up that long, slow hill of incline, until we recover that height and get even a firmer grasp upon it. The atavistic, by the way, means basically ancestral. It means literally the great-great-great-grandfather. So that's how far back an atavism is. It's well back in our past. But even though we're called back to that old being, we're still going to climb out of it and go forward again. Nothing is lost in this upward growth, either personally or generally, in terms of the human race. All is kept within. Who can say what victories of the kind may have been achieved in our past cycles, and how near may be the next ascension? It is not indeed necessary or possible that the whole race should transform itself from mental into spiritual beings, but a general admission of the ideal, a widespread endeavor, a conscious concentration are needed to carry the stream of tendency to its definitive achievement. Sometimes we comfort ourselves with the recognition that not all of humanity is necessary for us to make this next jump in the grade of evolution, to arise to a higher level. But there must be some general recognition in humanity that it is possible, that some are doing it. There has to be a recognition of the achievement. If we cannot make even that impression upon the general human mind, then we have not really succeeded in making that advance. Otherwise, what will be ultimately accomplished is an achievement by the few, initiating a new order of things. And otherwise, what will be ultimately accomplished is an achievement by the few, initiating a new order of beings, while humanity will have passed sentence of unfitness on itself, and may fall back into an evolutionary decline or a stationary immobility. For it is the constant upward effort that has kept humanity alive and maintained for it its place in the front of creation. So it is our effort at continued growth which distinguishes us and makes us the forefront of the evolutionary curve. We are the spear tip, the tip of the spear as it moves forward in time. If we want to remain so, we have to continue this aspiration and be willing to give up mere mentality and grow into supramental status. Not be the submerged secret soul, but become the overt, the manifest soul. So we are at a critical passage. Humanity must climb, not just an exceptional group, but must truly climb. The principle of the process of evolution is a foundation. From that foundation, an ascent. In that ascent, a reversal of consciousness. And from the greater height and wideness gained, an action of change and new integration of the whole nature. So if matter is the foundation, we rise out of matter. We turn the consciousness away from sheer externality back into inner realities. And we integrate that inner view with our outer being. The first foundation is matter. The ascent is that of nature. The integration is an, at first unconscious, or half-conscious automatic change of nature by nature. Nature is handling, at that level, the process of evolution. She is doing the work. But as soon as a more completely conscious participation of the being has begun in these workings of nature, a change in the functioning of the process is inevitable. The physical foundation of matter remains, but matter can no longer be the foundation of the consciousness. Consciousness itself will be no longer in its origin a welling up from the inconscient, or a concealed flow from an occult inner subliminal force under the pressure of contacts from the universe. The foundation of the developing existence will be the new spiritual status above, or the unveiled soul status within us. So in other words, our center of gravity will shift. We'll either live from above in the higher consciousness, the true principle of our origin, or from within, the true principle of our individuality, which is the soul. It is a flow of light and knowledge and will from above, and a reception from within that will determine the reactions of the being to cosmic experience. So you can see the partnership, the dance, as it were, between the descending higher consciousness and the emerging soul power coming here, saying, yes, I receive you. I will be your partner here on this earth. Let us divinize this place. The whole concentration of the being will be shifted from below upwards and from without inwards. Our higher and inner being, now unknown to us, will become ourselves. And the outer or surface being, which we now take for ourselves, will be only an open front or an annex through which the true being meets the universe. The outer world itself will become inward to the spiritual awareness, a part of itself, intimately embraced in a knowledge and feeling of unity and identity, penetrated by an intuitive regard of the mind, responded to by the direct contact of consciousness with consciousness, taken into and achieved integrality. The old inconscient foundation itself will be made conscious in us by the inflow of light and awareness from above, and its depths annexed to the heights of the Spirit. An integral consciousness will become the basis of an entire harmonization of life through the total transformation, unification, integration of the being and the nature. So that higher light descending from above will awaken and transform what seems to be inconscient, and there will be that redemption of darkness by saving light. Then all can be harmony, all can be integrated, and truly light, unity will be here and now. So this chapter we conclude tonight. We move to the 19th chapter next week. So this evening, from Savitri, we'll read from Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds. This is in Canto 5, the Godheads of a Little Life. Our seekings are short-lived experiments made by a wordless and inscrutable power testing its issues from inconscient night to meet its luminous self of truth and bliss. It peers at the real through the apparent form. It labors in our mortal mind and sense. Amid the figures of the ignorance and the symbol pictures drawn by word and thought, it seeks the truth to which all figures point. It looks for the source of light with vision's lamp. It works to find the doer of all works, the unfelt self within, who is the guide, the unknown self above, who is the goal. All is not here a blinded nature's task. A word, a wisdom watches us from on high, a witness sanctioning her will and works, an eye unseen in the unseeing vast. There is an influence from a light above. There are thoughts remote and sealed eternities. A mystic motive drives the stars and suns. In this passage from a deaf, unknowing force to struggling consciousness and transient breath, a mighty supernature waits on time. The world is other than we now think and see. Our lives a deeper mystery than we have dreamed. Our minds are starters in the race to God. Our souls, deputed selves of the Supreme. Across the cosmic field, through narrow lanes, asking a scanty dole from fortune's hands, and garbed in beggar's robes, there walks the One. Even in the theater of these small lives, behind the act, a secret sweetness breathes, an urge of miniature divinity. A mystic passion from the wells of God flows through the guarded spaces of the soul. A force that helps, supports the suffering earth, an unseen nearness and a hidden joy. There are muffled throbs of laughter's undertones, the murmur of an occult happiness, an exultation in the depths of sleep, a heart of bliss within a world of pain. An infant nursed on nature's covert breast, an infant playing in the magic woods, fluting to rapture by the Spirit's streams, awaits the hour when we shall turn to his call. In this investiture of fleshly life, a soul that is a spark of God survives, and sometimes it breaks through the sordid screen and kindles a fire that makes us half divine. In our body's cells, there sits a hidden power that sees the unseen and plans eternity. Our smallest parts have room for deepest needs. There, too, the golden messengers can come. A door is cut in the mud wall of self. Across the lowly threshold with bowed heads, angels of ecstasy and self-giving pass, and lodged in an inner sanctuary of dream, the makers of the image of deity live. I'm tempted to read more, but I'll halt for the moment. Namaste. Jai Ma. To our friends